Adrian, thank you so much for coming and joining me to talk about the power of listening and how you can use that to connect with others, build friendships, improve your relationships, and improve your relationship with yourself and your own health.
Emmy, I'm super excited to be here today. We've been wanting to do a webinar like this together for a while now, and it's just a pleasure to be able to do it with an awesome human like yourself.
Great, great. Well, let's just jump right into it. So we're going to talk about these ideas that all of us struggle with our relationships, with building business, doing sales calls, to our relationship with our body, and how the solution, even though a lot of it feels really complicated, overwhelming, the solution is quite simple. And so we're just going to jump into a little about me, and then where I came from, a little bit about you, and then where you came from. So kind of go through both our struggles. We'll talk about a case study that you brought up, and then we'll jump into the specifics for how people can do these simple things to completely transform their life and their relationships. Here we go. So I co-ran the number one fund in 1999 and have been a pro tech investor for about 25 years. I'm currently an executive coach, and I give workshops on connection, listening, and self-care. At age 39, I was ninth in the US World Cup trials in dressage. And then at age 51, I was silver in the US Masters 100 and 400 meter dash. And also that same weekend was the AAU North American champion for bodybuilding for physique for women overall. So my real story is that it's never too late and you can always fit it in. And so I worked 80 to 100 hour weeks while being world or nationally ranked in all these sports. And so that's really my message to people that I work with is you can always fit it in and it's never too late. But I wasn't always like this. I grew up in a pretty scary household. And so I didn't develop any social skills because people were too afraid to come over to my house. So I didn't really build any friends growing up. And I never felt really connected with anyone, either with friends because I couldn't really build friendships, and then with my parents that I was never really connected. And so that gives you this sense of not only being isolated, but feeling like you're not going to survive, because when you're a baby, you need to be connected to your caregivers in order to survive, or you're not there. You rely on them for food, for shelter. And so that led to a lot of attention seeking that I still kind of struggle with. Although I love doing getting attention, being on a webinar like this, constant attention giving, constant attention seeking is really unhealthy. And I'm going to liken it a little bit to sugar after this. And so what got me through, I think, is similar to what got you through, which was it started with athletics. It started with getting in touch with your body. And we could do this at any age. And for me, it was riding horses. And then all of a sudden, I felt like I can at least communicate with an animal. And then my coach, Lori, and this was the beginning of college, I noticed my reactions, my interactions with people was different than everybody else and not in a good way. And so I asked my coach, Lori, if she would coach me on relationships and on just if she would see me interacting in a way that wasn't right, she could just say, hey, Emmy, next time do this or do that, the same way she would coach me on a horse. And so she ended up doing that for years and years. During that time, I also went and won the gold in the Junior Olympics in dressage because I worked with Lori so much. And at the same time, my biggest triumph during this time was learning how to interact and connect with people. So I think of attention as like sugar. You just can't get enough. Sometimes I don't know if you've ever done that thing where you have a glass of water and you pour sugar in and it dissolves, and you pour more in, it dissolves. There's like unlimited amounts. And so I think of that as like, there's no amount of attention that would ever satisfy me. I would just go for more attention. And so I think of it like sugar. The more you get, the more you want, and there's never enough. And so for me, the solution that we're going to talk about today is turning that attention on other people. And first, I want to turn my attention on you and have you talk a little bit about your background, Adrian.
Emmy, I just want to say firstly, like, it's been knowing you for the last year and a bit, like seeing your journey, and then what I've been able to, just by being around you, what I've been able to implement into my life has been a game changer. It's like, it's made a huge difference. And that's what we'll go into in a sec, is like my marriage and my relationships and the way I like feel about myself, and more importantly, what goes on a daily basis in my mind. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Adrian Lee.
That's so sweet. I have to interrupt.
Sorry.
I have goosebumps. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to learn. Right, go ahead.
You are very welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Adrian Lee from Leeway Fitness. I'm a fitness coach, LinkedIn thought leader, and also have a virtual outsourcing business as well. But more importantly, over the last, 15 or so years, I've done a lot of self-development to be able to, first of all, work on myself so that I'd be able to show up as a better leader in all areas of my life. And fitness has just been the foundation to that. So it's helped me to be able to then build multiple businesses, including helping entrepreneurs, startups, and business owners build 6-figure plus online businesses. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without some amazing mentors and coaches. And that's why I put here my first business mentor, fitness business coach, Chris Dufay. I'd been following Chris for many years, and he truly helped me to actually make my dreams become a reality. And that was my dream. My dream was to, build a business, impact people, but more importantly, have the lifestyle and live life on my terms. And like Chris has been able to support me on that journey in a very short amount of time. So I'm super grateful. And that's why we have that book. He actually gave me that book. He bought me that book when we were out shopping a few years ago. And it's The Places You Will Go by Dr. Seuss. And it's so true. It's just like, I get goosebumps now.
Me too. Me too. Oh, it's so cool.
Because those people those come into your life, they come into your life for a reason. And I'll be forever grateful for Chris to be able to help me with that. So,
and what about this other group of people? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So that was, so we started face-to-face meetup events, networking events in Melbourne. It was the start of 2020. So we had our first one, and then obviously COVID. So we had to stop doing them. But then the start of this year, January 2021, that was our first meetup post-COVID. And that was where we didn't have to wear masks inside. So we were safe. We were we were following the law.
And connecting and listening and
so
doing all these, really being able to build human connections one to one. Yeah.
Spot on.
Awesome.
And the crazy thing is that it's perfect timing, by the way. I haven't always been a confident person. I remember early days when I was at school, if I had to get up in front of anyone, I would be sweating. I would be like stuttering, and I wouldn't be able to speak, and I wouldn't feel confident. I wouldn't feel calm like I am now to allow myself to, what we've learned along the way is actually pause for a moment and be able to then speak without, using filler words, and just being confident enough to be able to speak and listen properly. So a lot of the things that, a lot of the self-limiting beliefs and, I guess unhealthy habits that I had growing up, and that like kind of went through life like that until I really started to do work on myself, were like, limiting beliefs, procrastination in everything that I would do, like zero self-confidence in the early days, feeling shy, introverted. I was a fat kid as well. And that really held me back in my early years. I used to blame others, so I wouldn't take responsibility for myself and my actions. And obviously, my mum specifically, she was clinically depressed, and she would often go in and out of like institutions because she was
Wow.
suicidal and things like that. I didn't mention that before to you. But yeah, so growing up, mum tried to commit suicide on like a lot of occasions in front of me.
Oh,
Or
wow.
dad would walk in, she'd be cooking breakfast, and she'd be trying to like zap herself and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so those types of things helped me to become a stronger person. And also, I grew up with a
How did you become so positive after that kind of a, after that tough of a childhood? How did you, because you're such a positive person with such great forward energy.
Well, it's interestingly enough, my mum is a very positive person. So she may have been going through some tough times in the early days, but she did get on track, and she's a very positive, outgoing person, very social person, whereas dad was a bit introverted, a bit reserved, a very private, very private person. And also my parents were old school. So they had an old school conditioning that they then transferred onto me. And so over the years, I've worked on myself to uncondition myself from that conditioning in certain aspects of my life. Obviously, the work ethic has been a great positive, a positive thing that dad has, conditioned in me, which is fantastic. There's just some other stuff from a mindset perspective that held me back a long time, which was like, trading time for money, working a full-time job. Whereas like now, for example, building an online business, it's very much leveraged, and, I can live life on my terms as such. But yeah, started with self-care at age 17 with, weight training, and then first online business at 32, and then now obviously 37, 38 this year, running 3 online businesses. But more importantly, Emmy, like fitness saved me. In the early days, it was like not only, moving and being active, it was the confidence that I built along the way, the consistency. It was the life skills that fitness helped me to evolve to the person I am today. And, like I said as well.
Which life skills? Which life skills do you think?
I think consistency, commitment. Commitment transferred into my relationships. I was like full, commitment to girlfriends, to my wife of the last, 12 years. Now we have a son, Charlie. Like when I'm in a relationship, I'm very committed. I'm very consistent, and it just got me. So they're the main things, like consistency, commitment, leadership, loyalty, those types of things. That are the habits that I formed on a daily basis kind of transferred over. But it was.
Did you have this feeling when you get stronger and you feel better about yourself?
Yeah, I feel.
Did that also affect you?
I feel as though the training gave me an armor, an outer armor and an inner armor. So like Ned Kelly. So have you heard of Ned Kelly from Australia?
No, I want to look him up.
But years in, like, this is like the 1800s. So Ned Kelly was a bush ranger in Australia, and Ned Kelly also had like a tribe, of other rangers as well. But he was like the number one person, the number one leader of the Rangers. And he had this armor. So he had like a head armor. It was all like steel, very heavy steel, and full body armor as well. And that basically protected him from gunshots. So he would just walk through and people would be shooting him and he'd just be like, just nailing, basically, hurt them. But yeah, he was a bushranger. And for me, the strength training gave me muscle. It helped me to build muscle, but also an armor internally that it didn't matter what was going on in life. It was helping me become more resilient.
Nice.
On a daily basis. Yeah. So resilience as well, Emmy. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You'd mentioned a little bit about, you talked to me earlier that some of the things we talk about listening, using just the word what, just some simple changes have changed your relationship with your wife. And I'd ask if you would kind of go into a little bit of like, it's one thing to say, which we're going to talk about, like the words to use or how to structure sentences or the strategy. And it's another when the rubber meets the road. And you had said to me that, that your wife was like basically blown away at the change in the relationship and how great she feels in the relationship. And so I'd just love to hear a little bit about about that.
Yeah, so that's my beautiful wife, Al, and our little son, Charlie. Now, that was, I think, like 4 months ago that was taken. But there's some key steps that Al and I, without having a specific plan and sitting down, okay, babe, step one, we're going to do this. This kind of naturally happened, but we kind of had a bit of a framework. And so...
How did you have a framework?
So great question. So a lot of our conversations, I actually, and some of the things that I've seen in your content, I've taken away to be able to put together and just like one step at a time. So for example, I think one of the big things for Al and I was just letting each other speak without giving any advice, without interrupting or anything like that. And then taking it on board. That has been a game changer. Just listening to each other without interrupting. And we were focused, no distractions, no TV, no one else. Charlie's in bed or whatever. That was our time. And we do that every Wednesday night. So every Wednesday has been our date night since we've been together. So that has been like a non-negotiable in our life. Last night was date night, and we sit down and we talk. We talk about finances, how we feel, about each other and what's going on in life. And, are we moving towards our goals? How are you feeling this, all that sort of stuff. And what that has done is built out, because a marriage and a relationship is an ongoing commitment to each other. You have to consistently work on it, but you have to be conscious of it as well, which means you have to be present. And it's not something that, you go to work Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday or whatever, and then you come home and then 6 months down the track, you then sit down and have a chat. It's like, this is something like your healthy habits that you do on a daily basis that we then check in with each other. So Al and I check in with each other every day. Like, we just might sit down for 15 minutes at the end of the day and just be like, how's your day? What are your thoughts? Like, how are you feeling? And Al will just be so open with me. And that's helped us to create a stronger bond, because in past relationships, I had been a little bit restrictive in myself because, for example, like with talking about, financials, with talking about my feelings, by talking about and being honest with where I'm at in life. I held a lot of stuff back, Emmy, but I don't do that with Al.
Oh, that's awesome.
And because I had to work on myself in order to be able to come together and be able to, be on this journey with her. So
it's interesting from the outsider's view. It sounds very much like the similar journey of being young and growing up and having fitness create a system for you.
Yeah.
And that same consistency then you can take into all other areas of your life, and then kind of combining consistency that you know and trust in fitness with some listening skills.
Yeah, spot on. And I think too, just to add to that, you know, some of those life skills that I mentioned earlier were like, now they're kind of starting to really come to light, was like just self-love. Just being okay with who I am and not sort of worrying about what other people think, or just being myself, being cool with it. And you know what? Being happy with who I am and how I'm evolving, and being okay with making mistakes. And, you know, putting pressure on myself to be this like perfect person, or, you know, now I've learned to just accept that we're all going to make mistakes. It's how we react to them from, or not overly verbally, but emotionally and internal too.
Yeah.
Because now it's just like, cool, I made a mistake. Now I'll just, you know, learn my lesson and move forward, and, you know, hopefully not make that same mistake again. So yeah, it's just
Awesome.
it's being kind to yourself as well, Emmy. Yeah.
Yeah. I do find that if you don't have a good level of communication with yourself,
Yeah.
if you're not listening to yourself, if you're not kind to yourself, if you're not practicing self-care, it's really hard to care about other people and to kind of spread the love when it's not starting from within.
Yeah.
It's a really, because you just actually go back to what I was talking about with attention seeking. Because if you feel not whole in yourself, then you feel like other people need to give you something. And then you're not really coming from the place of giving them attention. You're trying to take attention. So yeah, the whole thing kind of unravels unless you start with self-love and self-care. That's a great point. Something that I love on this page is no advising. And there's a guy that David Rico, who talks about something called CIA, which is criticize, interfere, and advise.
Yeah.
And like nobody, I mean, we can all agree that criticizing is terrible. You know, like you could say like constructive criticism, but pretty much everybody's not going to take it well. So if you want to build a connection with someone, criticizing them is not the way to go. And you can also, you know, interfering, getting in someone else's business, that's obvious. A lot of people push back with me on advising, and they say, yeah, but it's so helpful. And what if I know better? And what if I could just help them a little on the way? And so how did this end up on your list of saying, you know, that's just not going to happen in a real connected, open conversation?
Great question. And this comes back to something that I learned from you.
Ah, cool.
Believe it or not, is that you're helping people to come to their own conclusion on their own, which means that you're not giving them a solution. You're supporting them on the journey to then help them to work it out for themselves in a sense. But you're guiding them along the way without giving them the solution. So I took that on board as well, because over time, I've just naturally always given people advice. And when I've done that from my evaluated experience, most people actually don't use it, or they don't take action on it.
That's depressing.
It's highly, it's very upsetting. But like, you spend so much time and energy. Think about that. The most valuable resources that we have are time and energy on people that might know it, but they're just like, think about it. Free advice generally, for most people, is just like, cool. But if you then actually action that, what would be the outcome? So I just stopped advising people, especially in my relationships. And I started with Al and I, and every now and then we give each other a little bit of advice, but generally it's us coming to our own conclusion that, like, I really need to do that. And generally it's not from the people that are closest to you. It's more often just like people just need to hear the same thing over and over again before they go, oh yeah, so and so said that to me as well, and they come to their own conclusion on their own. So yeah, that's where that came from, Emmy.
Oh, interesting. I had heard it first at with my coaching courses with CTI, where they said every person is creative, resourceful, and whole, and therefore you can't advise them. So I'd heard it from David Rico with the CIA thing, where it was like avoid being a person or avoid people who criticize, interfere, and advise. But then with CTI, they basically take it a step further and say, each person is whole, resourceful, and creative. And so there's no reason to give them advice because they're already resourceful. They can figure it out. And so the purpose is to ask questions and to listen. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Today, we're just going to talk now about, for the people that are watching, how you can take what we've learned and really break it down into these little pieces that you can just use anytime. They're simple. So it's one of these situations that I love, which is that it's a very complex problem with a very simple solution. Love those. So we're going to talk about how to know what level of listening you're in, staying present, how to ask questions, what types of questions, how many words, what types of words, just super technical, and articulating what's going on, staying curious, holding space for that other person. So there's actually levels of listening that you can think of. And this is going back to, instead of me being an attention seeker, giving my attention to others. And it's amazing because when you do that, there's so few good listeners in the world that you will get more attention and you'll get the true connection where you don't seek more and more and more like sugar. It's almost like eating protein instead of sugar. You actually feel satisfied when you give attention. So level one is, I tell you my story of growing up, Adrian, you tell me your story, and it's back and forth. And we have this great conversation and we both walk away saying, yeah, I learned something about Adrian. He learned something about me, and maybe an hour later, you feel a little tired from all the effort that you put into that conversation. And level two is where it gets really fun. And that's where you tell me something and I ask you, I stay curious. And if some thought comes up in my mind while you're telling me something, like meditation, I just let that thought go. And I get curious about you. You could even play a game that if a thought comes up while the other person's talking, that's now off limits for you to say. So that trains you to not even think other things when someone's talking. And you just keep asking these questions of the person. Now, an obvious thing that comes up is how many follow-up questions can you ask? And we'll jump into that next. But you just literally, that person, you ask them about, like, I could ask you about travel, Adrian, and then you tell me a favorite place, and then I'd ask you a question about that. And, we just kind of dive in and stay on you, not have it just be your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. And as we're doing this, all of a sudden I say, well, tell me about the time when you had a big fight with Elle, and you're like, yeah. And so that's part of level three of like, wait a minute, I don't want that out on a big webinar. No, thank you, Emmy. And then you're like this. And so that is level three. So I'm asking questions, but I'm also being sensitive that it's not like everything is open season. I can ask any questions. So if I see you go like this, I know that I want to do something to build a bridge back. And so I'm constantly feeling the mood of the room, the temperature of the room. And it may even come to like, oh, wow, Adrian, I just saw you lean back. What was that? Rather than, oh, Adrian, I just saw you lean back. You look so tense. I make no interpretations. I just say, oh, you lean back. What was that? I can feel that you did this. And so probably, but even better, just ask. which is a lot of those skills that you talk about with Elle, of just like, ask, am I reading this right? We don't have to be mind readers here. That's the beauty of this, is it's complex problems, simple solutions. So this is something that everybody can do on the webinar here. You can just pause the webinar and take 2 minutes and write down 5 questions that you're going to use when you get curious. So you can kind of start with a script. It doesn't have to be, it's tough at the beginning. At the beginning, you want to say, why did you do that? What were you thinking? And then people are getting defensive and you're like, God, this isn't working. So so it's easier to just really write down a script. So here you want to structure your questions that you're going to ask. You're going to be in level 2. You're going to be asking, say, 2 to 3 follow-up questions for everything. So you say, Adrian, tell me about your travel. You start to tell me about upcoming travel. And I ask 2 to 3 follow-up questions. I want to start those questions with the word what, or maybe if. If you decide to go here, what are you interested in? Something like that. You want to have the questions literally be so simple, 3 to 5 words. Some of the coaches that I work with say, we train smart people when they train coaches. We train smart people to ask dumb questions. So my hedge fund boss, who's a self-made billionaire, he would have us go on these road trips with him to visit management teams. And he would literally walk into the room, slouch down on a chair, look up at the CEO and say, how's it going? I thought, can he come up with a more intelligent question? You know, this guy made billions asking dumb questions. Now, of course, he interpreted what they say and all that, but he said, look, I don't know what I don't know. So I'm just going to ask, like, how's it going, and let them tell me what I don't know. So those are some great, yeah, so you want to start with what, and of course you still have to think about what you're saying. So what's next? What's that? What else? That it's a great way to kind of ask a question that's Switzerland. No interpretation, no leading. Often when we say how or why, it's like, how did you do that? Or why did you do that? You get into either someone explaining a bunch or they get defensive. And that's great. There's certain times we need to know how and why, but the purpose of this webinar is, how do you build a connection? And if you want to build a connection, creating defensiveness and explaining is not the direction. So for this purpose, we really focus on kind of what instead of why. And of course, you can use what to create a lot of defensiveness, like, what in the world were you thinking? Again, it's just like, why did you do that? So anyway, that probably goes into it enough. And so that's kind of the structure. And the strategy is just relax. Realize a lot of people, yeah, right? Just because now your question's going to be like, whoa, what's next? So now the other person does all the work. And I've had some clients have some issues with this, where they're like, I don't want to ask open-ended questions because I don't know the answer and I don't want to give up control. I have news for you. You do not have control over what someone else says. Even if you have a really long question, they may still say something else. So just realize that you never had control in the first place. So it's okay to let go of control. And even if you're a lawyer and you think you know the answer, you think you've prepared everything, they may just say something else. So, and then the other thing that I've been hinting at here is not to interpret. Either you don't want to interpret how they're reacting and tell them what they're feeling. You also don't want to put an interpretation into a question like, well, if I were you, I would be doing this and this. What do you think? Instead, just like, what are you going to do next? Very Switzerland, no interpretation. So on the left, here's some questions that you guys can pick from. I'm sure by this time, everybody's written down kind of their 5 questions. So let's go back to that thing where it's like, well, what's this big fight you had or this big breakup? And it's like, whoa, that's too close. So it's going to depend how close you are with the person. In this situation, we're mostly talking about getting to know someone. So you don't want to go too deep. You think about it a little bit like chess. I think about it like down 2 and across 1. Now, let's say we're talking about your travel. And we're saying, Adrian, where do you want to travel to next? You tell me. Then I say, what do you like about that place? You tell me. And then you say, oh, well, I really like swimming, Emmy. And then I say, well, what made you excited about swimming? Oh, well, my mom used to take me swimming when I was young. Now here's a time where it's like, I could go, well, what was your relationship like with your mother when you were young? And you're like, it just may be too early for us. And so that's a great time to say, where else do you like swimming? It's not a great time so when I say down 2 and across 1, it's not a great time to say, so then you've said, okay, I'm going on this trip. I love swimming. I used to swim with my mom when I was young. We've gotten to that point, and now I say, have you seen the baseball game that's coming up? And you're like, wait, does she not care at all about what we're talking about? So it's not to change the subject, it's to go adjacent. And it's important to build that, because now all of a sudden I just ripped that connection off because I pretended like I didn't care about what you just said because I just completely changed the subject. So that's something that can happen as you get a little bit close to the edge of deepness, to just remind yourself it's okay to breathe, to pause, and then to take an adjacent path. Like, where, are you going to teach your kid to swim? Just something that's not as deep, but adjacent. So this is a great skill. And I've run into this quite a bit with my coaching clients who kind of go, oh God, I'm too deep, but now where do I go? And so it's really, don't change subjects, just change directions a little bit. Now we're going to jump into advanced tactics or strategies. And this one's really fun and it's really scary. And I've done this with coaching clients, with groups, and it's interesting. They find it scary. And at the same time, when they do it and they see such a powerful positive reaction from the other person, they can see real time the relationship grows. These are things like when I was saying to you, instead of interpreting and saying, wow, Adrian, you just look very uncomfortable now. Now you're kind of like, well, Emmy, actually, I'm not that uncomfortable, or you're defensive, or it's not exactly what you felt. So now we're into this argument, which is not building connection.
Yeah.
So instead, I just say, wow, Adrian, I just noticed you lean back. What's that? No interpretation, total Switzerland. And you're free to say, Emmy, I felt a little bit uncomfortable. Or you can say, I'm pissed. Or you can say, this breeze just blew through and I was enjoying leaning back. It's nothing, right? So like, it may not everything is about me. So it's a great way to do that. The next level is something I'm going to demonstrate right now. Adrian, you are incredibly brave to share your most personal journey with all of us.
Thank you, Emmy. I really appreciate you being open and honest. And if I could just pause for a second and just take a step back. When I leant back, my shoulders are very tight from the workout I did a couple of days ago. But yeah, so I really appreciate you being open and honest. And I feel really confident and comfortable with talking about it.
Nice. And tell me how it felt when I told you that, when I gave you that note, when I noticed you in that way. Like, what went on through your body?
you were being present.
But what went on for you?
For me, for me,
like when I said, "Oh, Adrian, you're being so brave," what was going on for you in that moment when I was recognizing you?
it elevated my confidence to continue.
Nice. Now, I kind of saw you puff up a little, like you were really taking it in well, which is great. It's a great skill to be able to take in a compliment.
Yeah. And also, I just felt comfortable with telling you about it.
Nice. Love it. Love it. That's the area, even if you could, when I give you that compliment, take a pause and take it in for a moment before you reply, even a higher level. So this is really, really difficult to do. Often people do these noticing and witnessing what you see by saying, I see that your shoulders just went up. Now it became about me and my opinion and whether I'm right or wrong. So now I took half the energy. So either if it's something going on in the conversation where I'm noticing you, it's like, your shoulders just went up. What's that? I do not have the word I in the conversation. Or I want to really acknowledge something special about you. Then it's Adrian, you are this. Not Adrian, I think or I see, because now it's about me and me being right about you. So it's a small thing that makes all the difference in the world. And so that's kind of it. It's very complicated to do, and it's simple. So you level up your listening, stay level 2 and 3. You ask these questions going 2 down, 1 across, and you stay curious about the other person.
Love it.
Nice.
Simple.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and yeah, really fun to do this with you, Adrian.
Emmy, it's been an absolute pleasure. And as I said earlier, always learning from you. You have a wealth of knowledge and experience that you've been able to then share. And it's also impacted our lives just by taking action on that and trying to better ourselves.
And likewise, Adrian, thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying that. And I feel that every time we work together on our coaching calls, because you are my executive coach. So I love working with you. I get so much out of that, and you build my confidence as well.
Appreciate you, Emmy. You rock.
Awesome.
Double
Awesome.
bumps for awesomeness. Super pumped for what's to come.
Where can people find you? Where should people find you? I'm happy to share where they can find me.
Great question, Emmy. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message on LinkedIn. Add me on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. Or you can go to my website, leewayfitness.com.au. But yeah, the easiest way to contact is LinkedIn. So what about yourself, Emmy?
LinkedIn or Twitter. You can message me on either of those. I'm Emmy Sobieski on both of those. And then you can find my coaching and courses. The easiest way to do that is my10min.com or myhealth.mba. If you're really interested in the courses and the listening, then that's the better way to go. But everything is connected. So wherever you are that's most convenient, you can find me.
Emmy, I'd like to add as well, highly recommend your courses and also your free app as well. Like, that has been a game changer, especially.
Thank you.
We've all got 10 minutes, right?
That's right. That's right. Although I'm starting to sense some of your clients are using that as a way to get out of doing their real workouts.
Well, they could be, but at least they're doing something. So that's awesome.
They're doing something. Yeah. That's awesome. And there's listening exercises, resilience exercises, everything on that app. So I'm glad your clients are enjoying it, and just happy to share it with the world.
Thank you, Emmy.
Awesome.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm
Yep.
I'm really excited to get more people to actually see the power and feel the power of being able to use these things that you've been able to give us today, active listening, because they're like anything. You've got to work on them, and you've
Yeah.
always got to be, making it a little bit better for yourself, and evaluating where you can improve on. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure. The fun thing about it is that the fruit is very low hanging. And so if you just try one or two of these things, you will notice immediate results.
Yeah. Love that.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right, Emmy.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me today. I love sharing everything I know and all that I'm learning about connecting and about listening, especially when I get to do it with someone as dear to me as Adrian, who can share his own perspectives. If you have gotten to the end of this video and say, I want more, I want to learn more, jump over to myhealth.mba and check out the courses that I have there. Check out my app and feel free to contact me and connect with me with any questions you have.